Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Japanese ghost stories. Ubume, childbirth woman, a type of yokai or bakemono. Japanese ghosts are the spirits of women who have either died in childbirth or died without making sure that their children have been provided for. Ubume address a common concern in Japan, that of a mother's duty toward her children, and the stories of Ubume are many. Appearing in the form common to most Japanese ghosts, they are clad in robes of white and have long, unbound and disheveled hair. Banchō Sarayashiki, a servant girl, Okiku, works for a master who desires her, but she frequently rebuffs his advances. He has 10 very expensive plate heirlooms that she is charged with cleaning. One day, he steals one of the plates and accuses her of breaking it and concealing it. He says he will forgive her and say no more of it if she agrees to be his concubine. She refuses, and in anger, he throws her down a well. A few nights later, when he is sleeping, he is awoken with a soft woman's voice calling, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Scream, terrified that it is his murdered servant come back to haunt him. He called for an exorcist. He told him the story and bade him to wait for her. She came once more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Cried the exorcist. Okiku was placated, and disappeared, grateful that someone had laid her to rest. Botan Dōrō, an elderly, widowed samurai, would sit on the porch outside his home and yearn for a lover when one day, he saw a woman, with an attendant carrying a beautiful peony lantern. She goes to talk to him and all night they speak. Instantly smitten, the old samurai promises the woman an eternal relationship. Each night she returns to him with her attendant, the pair entering his home, staying till sunrise, then leaving. Until one night, a neighbor looks through the window to find the old samurai making love to a skeleton, blissfully unaware. The neighbor calls a Buddhist priest who advises the elderly samurai he is in danger and that he must not see these women any longer. He places a protection charm on his home. That night the women return and spend the night wailing and crying for him, promising him love and companionship. He gives in. The next morning, the neighbor checks on the old samurai to find him dead, entwined with the body of the skeleton, with a smile on his face. Yuki Onna. There is a legend in Japan that there is a woman whose body is as white as snow and she drifts around looking for someone to help her with her baby. With long black hair that covers her naked frame, she is called Snow Lady. But you must never help her, for if she offers her child to you, you will succumb to the cold and die. She can lure you to your death by singing and making you follow her till you are lost, by seducing young men, or by attacking you in the form of a blizzard. Akaname. A yokai who comes to untidy bathrooms and cleans it with a poisonous tongue, making it lethal to use. Amazake-babaa. If a child comes to your door late at night, begging some sake, you must ignore them. For at the other side of the door leans an old woman, reeking with disease, who will give the gift of sickness to anyone kind enough to answer. Futakuchi-Onna. A mean-spirited bachelor was expected to take a wife. Looking for a woman that would cost him very little to keep, he found a woman that never seemed to eat at all. Taking her as his wife as soon as he could, he kept her at his home and left for work as usual. But each day he would come home and find some of his food missing. He would watch her carefully, but she never ate. One day, he appeared to go to work as usual, but hid and peered through the window. He assumed he would catch her sneaking food. He watched his wife go into the kitchen and bring back some food. He watched her sit, but to his horror, as she undid her hair, A huge mouth with gaping teeth opened on the back of her head as locks of her hair guided the food into her mouth. Ikiryo. There was once a woman who was deathly ill and begged her husband to be with her for when she died. He shunned her and left the house, telling their maid to look after her. He made his way to his lover's home and made love to her. Shortly after, a knock on the door was heard. As his lover went to answer, he saw his wife standing there with a knife and plunged it into her chest, killing her. She then turned on her heel and disappeared. In horror, the man ran home to find his wife dead in their bed. "Why did you let her follow me?" he demanded of the maid. "Sir, your wife has been here all along. She passed away just moments before you arrived." One day, a handsome visiting priest named Anjin fell in love with a beautiful woman named Kiyohime, but after a time he overcame his passions and refrained from further meetings. Kiyo became furious at the sudden change of heart and pursued him in rage. The priest and Kiyohime met at the edge of the Hidaka River, where the priest asked a boatman to help him to cross the river, but told him not to let her cross with his boat. When Kiyo saw that Anjin was escaping her, she jumped into the river and started to swim after him. While swimming in the torrent of the Hidaka River, she transformed into a large serpent because of her rage. When Anjin saw her coming after him in the form of a huge serpent, he ran into the temple called Dojoji. He asked the priests of Dojoji for help and they hid him under the bell of temple. However, the serpent smelled him hiding inside the bell and started to coil around it. It banged the bell loudly several times with its tail, then gave a great belch of fire that melted the bell, killing the priest. A Mu-onna, aka Nothing Woman, is a type of yokai or Japanese monster. A Mu-onna is a vengeful spirit of a mother who lost her child to famine or war. She protects children in danger, but may also try to merge or absorb them. They can look into the child's soul to find information while merging with them. To gather the information, or to merge with them, the Mu-onna must cast a spell to put the child's soul to sleep. KeraKera Onna. This yokai doesn't want to hurt you. She wants to make you laugh. Looking normal enough, she will put her hands to her face and rearrange her features into a ridiculous style to try and get you to giggle. She will not leave you alone until she has made you laugh, distorting her face and grinning insanely at you until you chuckle at her. After which she will disappear. Content: she has done her job. Hanako-san or Toir no Hanako-san, Hanako of the toilet, is a Japanese urban legend about a young girl who haunts school bathrooms. She will appear if you shout her name. If you go to the last stall in the girl's bathroom and knock 3 times before asking, "Are you there, Hanako-san?" a voice will answer, "I'm here." If you enter the stall, you'll find a small girl in a red skirt, waiting for you. Hanako-san is a popular and widespread urban legend, often played by school children as a rite of courage, or a method of hazing for new students, similar to the Bloody Mary urban legend in Western schools. Kuchisake-Onna, also known as the slit-mouth woman, is said to have lived hundreds of years ago and was the wife or concubine of a jealous samurai. Kuchisake-Onna is said to have been extremely beautiful, and also very vain. Her husband the samurai believed her to be unfaithful to him, and one night in a rage attacked Kuchisake-Onna, slashing her mouth from ear to ear. On dark, foggy nights in Japan she hunts unassuming men. The urban myth picks up from this point, stating that a woman roams around at night, especially during foggy evenings, with her face covered by a surgical mask, which would not be especially unusual, as people in Japan often wore masks in order to protect themselves from the flu or avoid infecting others when ill. When she encounters someone, primarily children, teenagers or college, high school students, she will shyly ask, "Am I pretty? Watashi kirei?" If the person answers yes, she will take off her mask and say, "How about now? Core demo?" At this point, if the victim answers, no, she will slay them or cut their mouths to resemble hers. In many versions, her weapon is a pair of scissors. Before she kills the victims that responded with no, she would take them to her old house where her husband cut her. If the victim tells her she is pretty a second time, she follows the victim home and slays them at the doorway to their residence. The Noppera-bō, or faceless ghost, is a Japanese legendary creature. They are sometimes mistakenly referred to as a Mu-onna, an old Japanese word for a badger or raccoon dog. Although the Mu-onna can assume the form of the other, Noppera-bō are usually humans. Such creatures were thought to sometimes transform themselves into Noppera-bō in order to frighten humans. Lafcadio Hearn used the animal's name as the title of his story about faceless monsters, probably resulting in the misused terminology. Noppera-bō are known primarily for frightening humans, but are usually otherwise harmless. They appear at first as ordinary human beings, sometimes impersonating someone familiar to the victim, before causing their features to disappear, leaving a blank, smooth sheet of skin where their face should be. Shirime, aka the buttocks eye, is a strange yokai with an eye in the place of his anus. The story goes as follows. Long ago, a samurai was walking at night down the road to Kyoto, when he heard someone calling out for him to wait. "Who's there?" he asked nervously, only to turn around and find a man stripping off his clothes and pointing his bare buttocks at the flabbergasted traveler. A huge glittering eye then opened up where the strange man's anus should have been. This creature was so liked by the haiku poet and artist Busan that he included it in many of his yokai paintings. Ningyo. The mermaid of old Japan is more reminiscent of the infamous Fiji mermaid hoax than the beautiful fish girls popular today, looking something like a cross between a monkey and a carp. But despite its grotesque appearance, the Ningyo's scales are said to shine like gold, and like the traditional Western mermaid, it is a romantically tragic creature. According to legend, a Ningyo cannot speak, but its voice has a pleasant sound like a flute, and if it ever sheds tears it will be transformed into a human. But it is most famous for its flesh, a pleasant smelling and delicious meat that is said to make anyone who eats it nigh immortal. Nevertheless, a mermaid often brings bad luck or tragedy to those who catch it, and thus it is a fisherman's custom to throw it back. The Ningyo are often caught just before a storm, and when they wash up on beaches it is said to be an omen of war. Even the excessively long life granted by Ningyo meat can be like a curse for mortals, as the famous story about the mermaid of Wakasa, now Obama town in Fukui Prefecture, shows. It is said that a rare and marvelous fish with a human-like face was caught by a local fisherman, who had never seen such a thing before. Baffled, he served it at a party, but none of the guests would touch it once the fish's strange head was discovered. One man, however, was a bit tipsy on sake and by accident took some of the meat home and gave it to his daughter, who was 15 or 16 at the time. Subsequently, the girl stopped physically aging. She married many times, and had many children, but her husbands and friends all grew old and died while her youth remained unchanged. Finally, she could stand it no longer, shaved off her hair and became a Buddhist nun. Eventually she is said to have gone into a cave alone and at last died there. Today she is called the Hapyaku Bhikkhuni or Yao Bhikkhuni, the 800 nun, because that is the age she lived to. Wanyūdō, on the hub of a wheel there is a great monk's head, and riding on the single wheel it goes around and around. A person who sees it will lose their soul. If you write, "Here is the home of a winning mother," on a piece of paper, and apply it to the door where you could. I'll do one. Here goes. In Japanese, the word for she is the same as the word for death. Legend holds that receiving a phone call from a 444 area code or a number with repeating FAs is a portent of imminent death. The caller does not say anything, just breathes and wheezes. Often, the number the calls come from are, when dialed back, not valid or incorrectly dialed. The Jinmenken Japanese folklore has long been inhabited by goblins, specters, boogeymen, and all manner of fantastical creatures from the edges of human imagination. While many of these bizarre beings are understood to be firmly planted in the realm of myth, occasionally there is one that stretches at the curtain between the real and the unreal. In such cases, the line between pure folklore and reality becomes blurred, making it difficult to completely ascertain where one ends and the other begins. In some cases, we can have a creature which on the face of it may seem to be obviously a purely mythical construct, yet still remain persistently cited and documented to the point that it seems worthy of investigating further. The human-faced dogs of Japan are one such case. The Jinmenken, roughly translated as the human-faced dog, is typically said to be about the size of a medium-sized dog, often with matted or dirty-looking hair. From a distance, an observer may mistake one for just an ordinary mangy stray dog, yet on closer inspection see that these dogs possess a human face. The eyes are often deep-set and sad, and the tail is most commonly between the legs in an apparent gesture of passiveness or cowardice. An even more shocking revelation than the human face is their purported ability to speak. Typically, a Jinkenman will implore those who come across it to leave it alone, but on rare occasions will hold simple conversations. Jinkenmen are persistent in Japanese folklore, yet there seems to be more to them than that. Throughout the Edo era, from 1603 to 1868, these human-faced dogs were often encountered and cited by locals, to the point that they were occasionally featured in the news publications of the time. In addition to the sightings, Jinkenmen were at times allegedly exhibited at misamono, which were a type of Japanese carnival sideshow popular during the Edo era. These sideshows were somewhat of a cabinet of curiosities, typically featuring menageries of exotic animals, mounted displays or mummified remains of bizarre creatures or monsters, gaffs, mystical artifacts, and all manner of the strange and bizarre. Taxidermy specimens of Jinkenmen were often seen on display at such shows, and on occasion even live specimens were shown. In such shows, the Jinkenmen would be paraded about for all to see and became quite popular attractions. It is not clear whether these were actual Jinkenmen or regular dogs somehow altered to look like such through illusion and trickery. Yet the fact remains that there are numerous accounts of these exhibitions, and they were certainly observed by many people. It was not only commoners that marveled at these creatures in such sideshows either. One publication of the time included the testimony of a visiting zoologist, who remarked upon laying his eyes upon one such specimen, translated from the Japanese, "There cowering and whimpering in the corner of the display booth I saw the hunched-over form of what I first took to be a typical Shiba Inu, although of a somewhat more pungent odor. Then the thing looked up with sad eyes and I could see clearly that it was the face of a human being, albeit with the empty, soulless gaze of an animal. I immediately assumed trickery upon seeing such an aberration. Yet if one had forged such a horrific sight, then they had done so with such ingenuity and craftsmanship that I was unable to ascertain it as such. If this was some sort of macabre taxidermy of a living thing, then it was done without any visible indication of such. I could see no apparent stitches or artificial connection between human face and dog. I was eager to be on my way from such a ghastly abomination, and the thing's gaze left me with a deep unease long after I had left. It is interesting to note the feeling of unease the zoologist experienced. Premonitions of dread or feelings of deep despair are common occurrences in those who see Jinkenmen. Reports of Jinkenmen hypnotizing onlookers or inducing urges to get away are also not uncommon in accounts. Additionally, Jinkenmen are often considered to be portents of doom or disaster. Sightings of Jinkenmen are not merely confined to the rural Japan of the Edo era. Eyewitness accounts of Jinmenken sightings persist right up to the modern day. There are many reports of eyewitnesses describing coming across what they first take to be dog, only to have it turn around to display its human face. Other reports showcase the Jinmenken's apparent great speed as they are described as running playfully alongside cars on darkened roads, sometimes screaming or whooping as they do so. These sightings occur mostly at night in rural areas, yet this is not always the case. During the 1980s, a human-faced dog was often sighted rummaging through garbage in the back alleys of Tokyo's Shibuya district, which is a well-developed, bustling urban shopping area. Other sightings have been reported from other urban areas behind crowded restaurants, in alleyways, or in the darkened parking lots of apartment buildings. What do we make of these reports? As detached from reality as the notion of human-faced dogs may seem, theories abound as to what could be behind the sightings and stories. These theories range from the somewhat plausible to the downright absurd. Among the more far-out ideas are that the Jinmenken are the spirits of traffic accident victims or dogs possessed by evil spirits. Others say that they are the result of secret biological experiments performed in labs. It has even been suggested that these human-faced dogs are the chupacabras in Japan. Perhaps a more realistic candidate for the stories of human-faced dogs in Japan may be found in Japanese macaques. These primates are found all over Japan, and in many ways they could resemble a dog under less than favorable sighting conditions, such as at night when most sightings occur. They have faces that could be seen as somewhat human-like, and make a wide range of vocalizations which could possibly be misconstrued as speech by a frightened onlooker. Japanese macaques are also not confined to wilderness areas. In many locales, these monkeys are extremely bold in venturing into suburban or even urban areas where they roam about and raid garbage bins, one hallmark of many Jinmenken sightings. Could someone not familiar with seeing macaques mistake one for a human-faced dog under the right conditions? Real or imagined, whatever the Jinmenken are, they seem to be something that has crawled out from the confines of mere myth and folklore. Is there something to the stories? Perhaps somewhere out there is some explanation, or at the very least something close to an answer for these enigmatic creatures. Until then, if you are ever in Japan, make sure you keep an eye to the dark alleys. You never know what may be peering back at you from the shadows.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.